We are getting close to the end of this series that we've been working through this very important chapter of the Scriptures, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, which is about the resurrection. That's our deepest hope. It's not just a kind of wishful thinking hope. This is a real thing. It's going to happen. And we have this message, and next week we will wrap up this series, and then we will shift gears in the month of July. I'm planning a brief, hopefully brief, 5-week series on money. Well, I think we should talk about something a little bit more earthy for the month of July. But for these last 2 weeks, I hope you'll be blessed as you think about eternity. What is going to happen? What is come to pass for all those who are in Christ Jesus? And today we're going to talk about this issue of how death takes away everything, and how what is promised to all those who are given new life through Jesus Christ is that there will be an imperishable life that will swallow up death. That's what we're going to talk about today. Now, I just want to say a little something about this passage, and then we'll get into it. You know, it starts off talking about there's going to be this mystery. I tell you this mystery. I tell you this mystery. Flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does the perish inherit the imperishable. And then, in a moment, in a twinkle of an eye, we'll all be changed. There's going to be this trumpet. And what is this event? And I think what's going on here, there's some people who talk about this is the rapture, and they have all these speculations about the end times, but it's actually a lot simpler than that. That at the time when God makes all things new, there will be a trumpet. I presume there'll be an actual trumpet. And all those who have died in Christ, they will be raised in this flash, in this twinkle, and no longer will we be just mere flesh and blood like we are now. We'll have a new kind of body. We'll have all this stuff we were talking about last week. We'll have a spiritual body. We will have an imperishable body. We'll have imperishable hearts and minds and souls, and a whole new world will emerge. And that's the hope. That's the real hope. This isn't just a religious fable or just an idea or a form of wishful thinking. This is the real history. This is what's really going to happen. And today what I want to ask you is, have you really wrapped your mind around that this is real life? This is the real life. Or are you still living in sort of so-called normal life? But normal life is really always has death. Death is always there. Death is always there, and it steals away everything that really matters. Do you know that? And a lot of you guys are pretty young. I mean, I'm kind of in the halftime of life. All right, we got a few people here, a little bit more in the third, fourth quarters. I'm just entering third quarter. Some of you guys are, like barely getting to the second quarter, especially these college guys that we welcome today. And so you don't think death is a really relevant matter to your life. You're wrong. You're wrong. It's everywhere. It's like it corrupts everything. The stench and the rotten and the curse of death touches everything all the time. So let me get into it in 3 parts, as I usually do. Part 1, the sting and victory of death in this life. There's a victory that death always wins. It always seems like it wins, but not true if you have Christ, all right? The sting and victory of death in this life. Part 2, seeing the imperishable which defeats death. Can you see it? These last couple of weeks, I talked a lot about being able to see, not with these kinds of eyes, but seeing with there's a different organ. It's the eyes of the heart. It's an eye of heart filled by faith. New life in Christ. Can you see this imperishable life, not with these eyes, but with a different set of eyes? You have to be able to see it. If you can't see it, then death will just win. It'll win now. Right? And part 3, the certainty of hope. It's the certainty of the hope in imperishable life, okay? So let's talk about the sting and victory of death in this life. I want to just talk a little about this in this way. Do you realize, I mean, when was the last time any of you went to a funeral? Anyone went to a funeral in the last month? I have. It was my grandfather's funeral. There are, this is a strange church family. We have multiple services going on here, multiple generations, because we have more than one language of worship inside this church family. And there's a lot of people who are elderly on the Korean-speaking side, and because their sons and sometimes their grandsons and granddaughters are someone I have ministered to, or they're sometimes in this congregation, and then when they pass away, I go to their funerals, right? And I go to their memorial services. And so I'm reminded of this pretty regularly. And for those of you who are younger, you may not be thinking about this either, but when you get to this age, I'm in my mid-40s, when you get to this halftime period of your life, what starts to happen is your parents start to, they're old. And their friends pass away. And they are reminded all the time that death is there. And if you've ever been around the elderly, I don't know if you know this, so it's really almost obvious stuff, but since many of you are young, I just have to point this out. And our culture lives in what certain writers have called the denial of death. There's a brilliant psychologist, he's not even a Christian, his name is Ernst Becker, and he wrote this brilliant book called The Denial of Death. That's what we do all the time. We deny. I mean, liposuction, hair plugs, we make our skin, we do things to our skin so that we don't see the wrinkles, plastic surgery, we want to eat better. I mean, of course, it's just wise to eat better and exercise, and yet underneath this is also just this denial of death. But if you're around the elderly, I don't know if you know this, but you get to a certain age in life, one sickness or one fall, and all of a sudden you have a fall and you could break a hip. And then you will never quite walk the same again. And then it starts, a kind of depression can start to set in on people when they're 65, 75. And then they start feeling that there isn't much life left. And their soul and their heart starts to shrivel up. This is real. And we're all frail like this. But now I'm talking about those, okay, some of you are a pastor, come on. That's a long time away from me. But I got this really terrible news this week. I had this lunch on Friday with an elder. He's a retired elder. He just moved back to San Jose, and when I was 14 years old, he wasn't an elder, and he taught me Bible study. This is a man I deeply love and admire. His name is Sang-ho Park, and Elder Park, and we had lunch today, and he leaned over at the beginning of lunch and goes, "Did you hear about Jennifer?" Now, for those of you who don't know, Jennifer is a sister who was in my youth group. I actually had a crush on her, and back then, and he told me she passed away like last week of cancer, mid-40s. And I pray none of it never happens to you. But in a room this size, it's going to happen to somebody in this room. It's going to happen to somebody in this room. Maybe 2 or 3. If not mid-40s, in your 50s, and I pray not in your 30s. I've known people who died in their 30s from cancer, in their 30s. There are other things about death that we deny. Things like this. It isn't just that you die and then your life is cut short. And it's, of course, terrible when your loved ones die and your friends. So, you know what's happening? The friendships are dying. Your family is dying. If you're if your mom passes away, and your mom was the glue of everybody in your family, you know what happens? Your family starts to crumble. This is real. We did not know that my mother-in-law, Grace's mom, was the glue of our family. She's this really unassuming, kind woman. She didn't go to some fancy school. She didn't make lots of money. She was this short, just a sweet woman. And when she died of cancer in the 2000s, our family kind of imploded, essentially. And relationships that we didn't know this. We didn't know that certain relationships, we just think, I love you, sister. You love me as your brother. And, we're good with each other, right? But we didn't know that without mom there, that our relationship, like there's an engine and the power of the relationship is gone. And the relationship kind of starts to just wane. You know that? It's real. It's real. It gets worse. It gets worse. You wake up every day and you work, or you study, and you hope to accomplish things. The things that you accomplish, you hope will go on and will matter. The product that your company builds, the particular blessing that product is supposed to offer people in the world, and yet that you work really hard, and let's say you make this, you're an engineer, and there's this little piece of this really difficult problem of this product that has to go out, and you solve that problem. You and your team work crazy hard, or let's say you and your team work crazy hard to find that piece of biology that made this drug work, but your company is gone a little while from now, and all the work that you did, nobody remembers. The meaningfulness even of our work just dissipates out. That's part of death. Okay, it gets worse. Okay, this is really, and Pastor, this is super depressing. It is. It's so depressing. You know why? Because this passage says, death, where is your victory? Death, where is your sting? You know what that means? Death always wins. It always seems to have victory. And the sting of death is always around. We live in a time, because we are rich and we're prosperous. We live in the so-called first world. We live in the superpower where we feel safe all the time. We don't feel this. We don't feel that our country is insecure. And, a generation ago, we were well off, but those people in that land over there came and invaded us, and now my family's completely shambled, and my people, we are in shambles. So, you know where it gets worse? Your culture dies. Your culture dies. Languages die. The stories that make your people feel, we contribute to our culture. We have all these things that we feel like there's a we. We're a we. I mean, I'm not exactly, I hope that you feel that we as Americans, but, America will die. Nations die. Our heroes are forgotten. The music is gone. All the things that are joyful, that make life meaningful, that make life, death just steals it away. You get it? It's awful. It is awful. Now, I want to point out something. Now, that's all really depressing and fine. So let's say you're alive, and of course you're all alive, okay? And you're healthy, and you have a bright future ahead of you because you're bright, and you have good discipline, and you went to a good college, or about to go off to a good college, and you're going to make good money, and you're going to contribute into our society, and you're going to, meet your soulmate, and you're going to have your 2.2 beautiful kids, and your 2.2 beautiful kids, one of them is going to become an astronaut, and the other one's going to be a supermodel, and the point two, I don't know how the point two one will work out, okay? And so this is life. This is going to be great life, but do you realize that we wonder why, okay, so just, do you know that there are just all kinds of hurting people around us? They're poor because they were born with the so-called wrong skin color. They're excluded. And we care about this thing that we call justice and mercy. And everybody gives lip service to caring about people who have, who experience injustice and exclusion. And then you know what we do? And then the vast majority of us, we barely lift a finger about it. We don't give money to it. We don't really care that much. We kind of care. We kind of care. Come on, I'm just being real here. You kind of care. You care when, the guy at church comes up here and asks you for some money to help poor Native Americans. You care for, okay, I think I'll kind of care. Oh, I'm not going to do that, right? And then helping other people, we have all these great advantages. There's all these people, they have nothing. They have nothing. And then shouldn't we care about them? We kind of care about them. But you know why we don't really ultimately care about them? Because of death. Because you know what we all have a scarcity of? Okay, some of you are rich, some of you are not so rich. Okay? So you don't feel like you have a scarcity of money, but every single person has a scarcity of life. It's a scarcity of life. This thing called death hanging over us. And so you know what that means? That means is everybody, since there's a scarcity of life and the things that make life good, everybody has to get their own. This thing, this victory or sting of death makes everybody, by default, selfish. It's absolutely rational, logical to look for a number one. There's only so much life. If I'm going to live tall, like my dear friend Jennifer, she's wonderful. I think she became a pastor's wife. I would never have seen that when she was in 9th grade, okay? I think she became a pastor's wife and really godly person. She had children. I'm sure she was probably a terrific mom. And whether it happens in your mid-40s or you live to 100 like my grandfather, scarcity of life. And so everybody's got to get their own. And so I only have so much money. I only have so much time. And I have to give it for my stuff. And so, as long as death reigns, there will always be injustice. There will always be injustice. Absolutely. There will always be injustice. There will always be people that we step on, trample. There will always be slavery. There will always be racism. There will always be poverty, and people will continue to go on, and only a very minority of people really care about it, and most people will just give lip service to it. This is as good as it gets if death wins. That's it. That's how it works. So that's enough of that, okay? That was really, really super depressing, okay? That was awful, all right? Let's talk about, but that's real. That's real this life. The sting and victory of death all the time. But there's a better way. You have to have hope. A hope which is real. That's why, hence the name of the series, Real Hope. And the hope has to be this thing, you have to be able to see it. And you have to put your mind in that hope because everything around us that says death wins. Sting of death is constantly on us, even if we just, we wrap ourselves in this little cocoon, this little suburban little denial. That is like the life of the little denial. That's basically what rich people do. I'm not trying to really dog on rich people or something like that, but that's what the gated community is. It's sort of like keep all the death out there. We'll just try to pretend like there's only going to be life inside of here. Or a mansion. If you have a mansion, there's a huge property, keep all the death out there. That's what it is. How do we see it? Now, what I'd like to do is just give you pictures. I'm going to give you 3 pictures. All these pictures are in one way or another taking very seriously this thing. Flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, but an imperishable life is ours. It's all taking that very seriously. It's not just, oh, I'll think about that after I die. You need to think about it now. Otherwise, death just wins. And I think about this a lot. I would say, in some ways, if you could get into my mind on a Monday or a Wednesday or a Friday, you would say, Pastor, you're kind of like a daydreamer. You seem to like live in the life of your imagination. The rest of us are out there like fighting traffic and like, flipping people the bird and doing the normal stuff out there to like just fight the scarcity of life and like the nasty office politics, that person who kisses up to the boss that everybody hates, but we know he's going to get promoted and we're going to get left behind and we hate him, so we have to find a way to like stick it to him at the next Christmas party, like that stuff, right? That stuff, right? And so, I try to live in this, and a lot of people would think it's like daydreaming. If that's it, I would say I'm living in reality and you're living in death. Hope that doesn't sound too insulting. I'm inviting you to come live in reality, the real reality. Let me give you some pictures. All right, number 1. Imagine a world where there's no more pride. Just like that thing that screws up every relationship. Every person that you meet, you're insecurity, they're insecurity, they have to feel better than you. You don't feel like you're good enough, so you have to like make yourself pretty and like, you hate it if she's prettier than you. That thing, that's pride. The guy is like, of course, he doesn't actually literally do this, but if the basis isn't physical muscle, it's more like how smart you are. You have to kind of insert that little comment about that thing that you read that proves to everybody pride. Imagine if there's no more pride. What if no more petty politics? What if everybody was just totally naked to the soul and it wasn't ugly? It's like in Genesis at the beginning. The man and the woman were naked and they were not ashamed. Imagine if there's no more ashamed. Every relationship is pure and authentic. All the work and creativity doesn't die. Imagine if the work and the creativity doesn't die. What can you do if the person who had a gift of let's say, fashion talent could work on that gift for 100 years and not just, till she just got old and died because she was now 65 and now we have to, lay her off. Imagine if she could do that. What if she could work on it for 1,000 years? Can you imagine the clothes we could wear? And imagine if she did this not for money, not for power. She did it out of love to offer everybody her beauty, the beauty she sees. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine? I don't know if there's going to be companies. I imagine there's got to be teams. Can you imagine the orchestras and the bands and the songs and the buildings and the art that will be built? Can you imagine? Just think about that. I think about that all the time. I'm an Apple guy, and when I first got my iPhone, I thought it was so cool, and now I'm kind of starting to hate it. It's like it doesn't really serve me, and I keep thinking about this, and I think about all the ways they kind of rip me off. Sorry if you work for Apple here, okay? It's like this is just good feedback for your company. Okay, just take it to your bosses, okay? And I just think about the ways that they're kind of ripping me off, and then I think about what's going to happen after Apple dies. And one of the things is they're one of the singularly great creative companies on this planet. And their art of technology is gone. Okay, we're talking about Earth. Apple dies because you do know that the little demigod who ran Apple, he died. He died. And when the demigod who ran the cult called Apple died, the cult is kind of in decline, and that's kind of why I'm so like not happy. And sometime, not soon, that will die. But imagine there was a company that was no pride, and so pure, and only 1,000,000 times better than Apple. That's this life. Okay? How about I'll give you a second picture. I have this thing, when I think about my future, it's my future. This is my future. I think of the people I'm going to eat lunch with. This is how I think. What makes my life great? It's food and love and company. You know, this is, and so I kind of feel like I pretty much like wake up every day to work, so then I can take my kid on a daddy date. You know, like that's like one of those those little wonderful things I get to do. Right? But I can't wait. My grandfather passed away recently. He was 100 years old. I was actually closer to his wife, my grandmother. She passed away when I was 27. So it's been almost 20 years now. I adored my grandmother. I adored her. She was about yay tall. She had a heck of a sense of humor. She had this beautiful angelic singing voice. She loved Jesus. She read through the Bible, I don't even know how many times, umpteen number of times. And she radiated like joy and kindness to everybody. When I was 16 years old, I was thinking about this in preparation for this message. I had an experience which I think was sort of a foretaste of this imperishable life that is to come. When I was 16, my brother and we went to Korea. So, we came to the U.S. when I was 5. I'd never seen Korea, as an older person until I was 16. At 16, we visited Korea for the summer. And then we went to the church where my grandmother grew up. Well, it wasn't where she was a young adult. These people, word spread around that these 2 Korean American kids who can't speak Korean, standing there at church, word was that Mrs. Peck, because that's her maiden name, Peck Kwansanim, if you guys don't know what Kwansanim is, that's a title of honor for a godly woman. Peck Kwansanim's grandchildren had visited. And these people, I've never met. I don't know them. Some were relatively young, some were old, just started coming out of the woodwork, and they started hugging me and my brother. Because they loved my grandmother when she was young, and she loved them. And just because I was her granddaughter, they loved me. Isn't that incredible? And when you get to the New Jerusalem, because that's what the Bible calls it, the New Jerusalem, that's the place where the imperishable life owns everything. It's going to be the greatest reunion ever. Like that little thing. I mean, it was weird. I just felt welcomed, and I felt totally weird. I was like, who the heck are you? And they started saying things to me, and I think they were telling me this little story or that story about my grandmother when she was young, but I couldn't understand it because my Korean stunk. I can't wait for the day when I get to have a conversation with my grandparents, and there'll be no language barrier. I speculate about this. I wonder if there will just be one heavenly language, and we will not speak English or Korean. There will just be one heavenly language, or we'll all have to learn the other person's language. But since there's no scarcity of life or time, everybody will say, I love you, let me begin learning your language. And we'll really talk fluently in about 5 years or 10 years, because some of you guys are not very good at learning language. I think for me it'll take about maybe 5 years, okay? I'm not that good. I'm like, some of you are really good, 1 or 2 years. I'm sort of, in the middle, 5 years. Some of you guys are probably really bad. It'll take you 10 or 20, okay? But nobody will be impatient. Nobody will have pride, and nobody will say, oh, you can't speak my language, get away. They'll just say, let's hang out next year, and let's see how you're doing. And then I'll work on your language. I'm not sure how it's going to be. I can just imagine as my Korean improves, my grandmother is just going to laugh her head off. And I can't wait for her English to improve. I don't know if that's, I just don't know. I don't know. Just think about it. The possibility starts getting really wild. And she doesn't know the music I love. I know the music she likes. They were like hymns. And she sang them beautifully. But I can't wait to say, Grandma, I'm going to pull out my, I don't know, the heavenly iPod. I don't know what you call that, right? And the eternal, made by the super genius engineers, the latest version of the Bluetooth. I don't even know if you will need a device. Maybe we'll just go boom, and then the music will just like I don't know what they'll invent in the future. Okay, and the engineers, you know, the godly engineers of the future, in eternal life. And I was like, Grandpa, listen to this. And it will be the latest song that will be a collaboration between two of my greatest Christian authors, Christian music writers of all time. One is J.S. Bach, and Bach will learn 21st century pop. And Bono will learn how to hang with Bach. And Bono and Bach will be buddies, because there'll be no pride. And that'll be the latest album. And we're going to order the best Mexican, Korean fusion burrito that'll be perfected. It'll be perfected. I mean, you guys realize this food has just started, okay? Some person in the next 100 years is going to perfect this food, and they're going to die, and they're going to believe in Jesus. They will cook this food. And it will not cost us money. I presume you just need an appointment. And the line might be long. Like, okay, they go, oh, I got to get Mexican, Korean fusion burrito. And you have to make an appointment at that restaurant. You're going to get a reservation. The reservation is 30 years into the future because, it's a long line because we have physical bodies. And I'll say, Grandma, we can eat this food and listen to this music. And I can't wait to see her face. You get it? Am I making this up? Is this real? Isn't this real? I think it's real. If I'm making it up, it's only because it's not good enough. You get it? I'll give you one more picture, and then we'll go to the close of my message. All this week, we had 5 Native American. We have 5 Native. Their names are Danielle and Bob. Bob's not even his actual name. His name is actually Elijah. His mom's a Christian. She named him Elijah, but I don't know why he goes by Bob, but he's Bob. Okay, and they're here from the reservation, and they're doing VBS. And I'm pretty sure if we had not gone to that reservation, I don't know what would be happening to these teenagers. It's normal. There is just so much despair on this reservation. We gave this homework assignment to the bishop team. You have to read a chapter. This past week, you had to read a chapter out of a book called When Helping Hurts. Brilliant Christian economist Brian Fikkert wrote this book, right? And he talked about, there's a chapter on there on what is poverty. And you know what he basically says? Almost all North Americans think poverty is lack of money, lack of resources, like material stuff. We think about poverty as a material problem. But then he cites this book where all these people around the world, the global poor, people who are like dirt poor, were asked, what do you think is poverty? And you know what they say things like this. It's that we feel like we are nothing and we are the trash. And I go to the cupboard to provide food for my children for dinner, and we don't have any, and so I just feel ashamed, like I'm a failure. That's poverty. That's poverty. If that's poverty, you can't fix it by giving them money. That's why this thing of like solving poverty, I'm telling you, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen apart from Jesus. It's never, ever going to happen apart from Jesus, because death will always win. People will just be like, if that's what it takes, like literally it's 4 generations of feeling like you're nothing. So like you can love them for 20 years, but that person's still going to feel like they're nothing. How do you solve that? The only way you can solve that is if imperishable life wins. See? If you believe that now. If you believe that now. Because right now you're like, people, there's a lot of people who, I call them kind of like these do-gooders. There's a lot of people who have no Jesus, and they think they're going to go solve world hunger or like poverty, and they really are serious about it, and like a lot more serious than the average Christian. So I admire them for that. I really do. I genuinely admire them for that. But I go, good luck with that, because they're going to go in there and find out that poverty is like a demonic thing that's just like eating people alive from the inside, not just the outside, not just about money. And that thing's going to eat them up. And their scarcity of life, they're just going to feel death closing in on them. The hopelessness, the futility, they're going to feel that thing closing in on them, and they get burned out and they quit. This happens to Christians too. So the only way you can go in and love people who are really hurting, who have great poverty, is if you got this. You got to have this imperishable life, real hope. It's got to be in your head. It's got to be in your dreams. It's got to be the real life that you live in. So here we go. I'm going to go, when I get to that place, when life is just, there's no more death, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren of Bob and Danielle and Jesslyn, it's going to be like when I went to that church in Korea when I was 16 years old, except they'll come up and they will go, SooSang's here. Damon is here. Hey, Damon is the guy who helped our great-grandmother Jesslyn know Jesus. She came out to San Jose, and instead of giving herself to drugs when she was 16, she gave her life to Jesus when she was 14. Damon is the person that she talks about. And then she'll talk about these other odd people, these weird Koreans. A lot of them are Koreans, some were Koreans, some were Chinese, some were some other folks from San Jose. They made the difference in my life. And so the great-grandchildren, and then they will invite me into the Paiute neighborhood. And we will eat their food, their perfected food, whatever, the Paiute Mexican fusion, whatever that is. And then we will listen to their music, and they will teach us how to dance their dance. And all the hard work I do, like this was, Damon and I and CS, we worked really hard this week. There's like, I can't even tell you how many problems arose to get those kids out here to San Jose. It's like when you work with people who are hurting, I mean, something simple as like, do you have a credit card? Oh, you don't have a credit card. Oh my gosh, we can't rent this car for you. How are we going to get that happen? One of the women who were driving the kids to Bakersfield so we can meet them in Bakersfield, she doesn't have a GPS. Actually, there was a GPS in the car, but she didn't know how to use it. She got lost. So Damon and I were stressing out yesterday. We had like, I don't know, we had like all these little fires of stress all throughout the week because of our great love for them. And it'll be worth it. More than worth it. See, it's worth it. It's like when I look at them today, this 14-year-old kid's like, yes, SooSang, yeah. Because they're kids, right? I just think to like, wait till I meet your great-grandchildren. I want to close. I want to close with a passage from the Scriptures, one of my very, very favorite passages in Scriptures. See, Jesus came, this is the strange part of Christianity. Jesus allows there to be hurt, and he allows there to be death winning right now. Why? Because He wants to prove to the world, God wants to prove to the world that by his death and resurrection, by his blood, people can really know their sins are washed. They can know that death is not going to have the final say. They can know that whole cultures and people can be redeemed. They can live in that. The whole world will be living with death on top of them, but these weird people will live in a whole nother way, and they'll even suffer for it. They'll give their money for it. They'll even die for it. They'll sacrifice their children for it. They will do things that make no sense. They make no sense. And the whole world will go, despite the fact there's pain and suffering and injustice and everybody acting like, like the scarcity of like, we're supposed to be human beings, but we're more like just competing rats in a cage, just like biting each other. And injustice just reigns because death reigns. But the real fight of history is that Jesus is real, and the people who really know that the resurrection is real and it's the final thing, these people, they'll show the world. They will take it. They'll take the suffering, and all their sins will be upon Christ, and all his resurrection and hope is on us, and they'll go out and spill out into the world. Let me close with this passage. This is from Revelation chapter 21, and this is what it says it's going to be like. Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. We no longer feel that he's far away. He's with us. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. God will be literally married. He'll be like married to us. So close. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. And he who was seated on the throne said, Behold, I am making all things new. You know who this is? Also, he said, Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. And he said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end. This is Jesus. To the thirsty I will give from the spring of the water of life without payment. The one who conquers will have this heritage, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. There will be no more tears and no more shame forever. This is real. This is real hope. So, brothers, live in the real hope. Keep fighting the injustice, because we're going to win. Keep fighting the death. We're going to win. Keep ending the poverty. We're going to win. Keep loving the unlovable. They will embrace you. Their grandchildren will embrace you. All because of Jesus. Let's pray. We confess to you, Lord Jesus.